Glenn.
All right, everybody. This is a RockerMike and Rob Presents show, and this is the one we've been talking about, celebrating the last few days about. We got Mr. Glen Matlock, formerly of the SexPistols and some other fantastic bands. We talk about all that. Glenn, you are in your Jaguar doing an interview with us. That is fucking cool, man. That is.
Yes,
that
I
is
am.
awesome.
I like the way you say Jaguar because I found out recently we always say Jaguar in England.
Yeah.
And we thought the Americans were wrong, but actually they're right. There was a guy from Jaguar saying it should actually be Jaguar and not Jaguar. So,
so for the first time, an American says English right? We usually do everything the wrong way.
Pretty much. I think we should call up the Guinness, we should call up the Guinness Book of Records now.
Hey, so Glenn, you guys are facing a lockdown right now, right? You're getting shut down again?
Yeah, starts midnight tonight across the country.
Yeah.
For how long? How long are they doing it?
Well, they said 4 weeks.
Holy
it's
wow.
not a total lockdown. Some stuff will be open. So.
Right.
We might be having the same thing soon too. Who knows? Hopefully not.
Well, I think the best thing is that they do it sooner than later.
Yeah.
And then it'll be shorter.
Probably right.
They could have done ours a few weeks back for 2 weeks, and it coincided with the kids' half-term holidays. And they didn't.
Glenn, so we're going to talk about this is like a this is your life kind of thing, okay?
All right.
I just want to say off the bat, I mean, I've been following your career most of my life, really, since I was about maybe 12 years old, okay? First time I ever heard the Sex Pistols. And, what's so interesting about your career that I find is, a lot of people kind of just think about the Pistols and maybe a little bit after, but you've had this, like, amazing pedigree of stuff afterwards that, you played on so many great albums, so many great musicians, everybody from, Iggy Pop to, you collaborated with Mick Ronson and things like that on your records and things. I mean, to me, and even doing some research, I learned a few things. So I feel like you're kind of like, a nice little jewel that hasn't really been dug up yet. But you've been around.
I felt like that for 45 years.
All right, so we're going to go back a little bit. You were born in the Paddington section of London, right?
Yeah, I was born in Paddington General Hospital. Yep.
Right. Now, you were going to a place called St. Martin's School of Art up until 1974. Was that something that, going to art school, were you already determined on being a musician at that point, or you weren't sure?
I wasn't sure. The good thing about art school in England back then, it was, especially in the 60s. I mean, it was before my time, but it was a good place for people who were skivers, right? Knew what they didn't want to do. Wasn't quite sure exactly what they did want to do, but it gave them a bit of time to find out. And in the 60s, you used to get a grant, so there was a bit of money. I didn't. They stopped it by the time I went. But it was a good way of just sort of finding out what you want to do, but also being a music fan. All the bands I'd read a bit of research, like what you've done on me. They'd all gone to art college, so I went to art college to try and get in a band. But the funny thing was, I'd met a band outside of art college, so I took the band to art college and introduced them to the kind of art school scene because there were things going on there. Art schools where people tend to sort of entertain, more kind of wacky, outlandish ideas and things.
Yeah.
And the guy, one of the guys I met, and what was good, I mean, I was 17 when I went, and it was in Soho in the middle of London, which was like the seediest part of London. It's like Greenwich Village or something like that, as it used to be. But there was a couple of art schools around, all had different names. They've now amalgamated. But I met a guy when I was looking for some gigs for the early Sex Pistols at Central School of Art, which was not far away, and he's still a friend of mine. And he went on to do a lot of stuff, and he's art director of movies. And the guy who booked the first Sex Pistols show ever also art directed Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. How's about that?
Wow.
Wow.
That's a guy called Alexander McDowell.
Okay.
Very clever bloke. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So there was a scene, you know, and also the scene was, and I was also working for Malcolm McLaren and Vivian Westwood at that time, and I asked Vivian if she thought Malcolm would give me a reference when I applied to art college. And she said, well, I don't know if you want to do that. And I said, why not? And she said, well, he's been thrown out of every art college in London. So I was more interested in Malcolm and he was more interested in me because I was applying to go to art college. So it kind of it's all in the mix there somehow. You know, and a lot of people thought that art college was kind of like for middle class kids and stuff. No, I'm a working class bloke. It was where the working class blokes who could paint a bit met debutantes from Chelsea. So it's not such a terrible thing. Don't knock it.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it gave you an opportunity to figure out what you wanted to do, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Now,
where are you from? That sounded a bit Brooklyn to me.
I was born in Brooklyn. Yeah, I live in Queens.
There you go.
Yeah, we're down on the Lower East Side right now in a basement.
Oh, okay. You anywhere near? I've done Greenwich Village Radio a few years back down that way.
Well, we're on the East Side.
Yeah, we're on the East Side.
Down like a block from St. Mark's Place.
Not Greenwich Village. East Village Radio.
Yes.
It's a girl called
CBGBs. Where it used to be.
Yeah, I know. Cool.
Yeah. So, story goes that you met Steve and Paul when you were working at the Malcolm's shop, right?
Yeah, his Teddy Boy shop. Yeah,
the Teddy Boy shop, right? Now, Steve and Paul kind of had a band already at that point, or did you kind of start it with them?
No, they'd already had a band already. There was another guy in the band who's kind of been written out of history a little bit called Wally Nightingale.
Wally, right.
And he went a bad guitarist. He didn't really look the part, but he could play a bit. And they kind of wanted to be the faces, you know, ish. They didn't want to be the faces, but that was a starting point. And they liked early Roxy music and Steve Ellis's love affair and things. And, Wally was probably the best musician. I was next, and Steve and Paul, but we was all learning to play, you know. And if anybody was a bit better than the other one, it was only because they were like 2 weeks ahead of the other one, you know.
Now, did you do a lot of covers to start with?
Yeah, but you know what's good about doing covers?
What's that?
Is sometimes they're a bit hard.
Yeah.
Right. So you try and play them, and it don't sound nothing like the original, right? But then you think, it still sounds like something, and you got your own song. So it's quite good.
I got you. Wow. It's like nicking it, but not really nicking it, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's cool. That. But I mean, you know, when you were doing covers and you kind of started doing originals for the reason you said, what was the first song that you wrote within the band? Because I know you wrote a lot of the songs. So what was the first original?
Well, they sort of made one original which really kind of lasted the time, and it was called Scarface. And the lyrics were about some kind of gangster who had a scar. And the lyrics were written by Wally's dad, who was an electrician, right? But that song actually became "Did You Know Wrong?" It kept going through different changes.
What song did it become?
"Did You Know Wrong?"
Oh, okay, great one. Yeah, wow.
And that original guitar riff was Wally's, and he got credited in the end.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
You know, I never knew that. Yeah. How did you come up with the name for Sex Pistols? How did you come up with the name for the Sex Pistols?
Because when I started working for Malcolm, his shop was called Let It Rock. It was a Teddy Boy shop, and he wanted to change it. And he wanted to call it Sex. It was sort of something that was kind of catchy. And then we was just the Pistols from the sex shop, the Sex Pistols.
Oh, right. That's such a simple.
Now, were you there when John auditioned to sing?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you think he was the one? Were you happy with his performance?
He was the best. He was best of the bunch that we'd had up till then. Which wasn't that many people, but there was a few. And yeah, John had something, and he sort of sang along to an Alice Cooper song in a jukebox after we'd had a few drinks in the pub.
I've heard it was the song "I'm 18." Is that correct?
Yeah, and,
great song.
But it was a funny situation for him to be in. You know, it was very awkward.
Yeah,
but he kind of turned it around somehow. So yeah, so we thought we'd run with it, and then we started taking it a bit more seriously.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that's cool. That's cool. What can you tell us about the Anarchy in the UK tour that you did with the Clash and Johnny Thunders and the Damned?
What can I tell you about it? It was a bit boring, really, because we didn't get to play anywhere. It was a drag. We had a record out. All these places wanted to ban us, but we had done this TV show where Steve swore his head off on live TV, and we became
the Bill Grundy show, right?
Number one for about 2 weeks, and we got banned from everywhere. So it was
yeah. I think you only played about 7 shows. Is that right, approximately?
No, I think 3.
Oh wow.
Oh, and then they just stopped them from playing shows.
What happened?
We still went round and turned up at the gigs because we wanted to play, and if we didn't turn up, we wouldn't have got the money, you know. Or half the money. So we had to fulfill the contract, but we get there and they say you're not playing. So it was all a bit of a thing, you know. And then it had become a bit. Everybody got on top of each other, and that's when we started arguing, really, you know. So.
Yeah, yeah. Now I read in a book. You might be familiar with "Please Kill Me." Have you ever read that?
Please Kill Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it on the side. I flipped through it.
Yeah, it's about the New York punk scene around CBGBs.
Right.
I think I read in there that you know, Johnny Thunders when he did that tour with you guys, that really like heroin hadn't been a problem on your scene too much until he came along. Is there any accuracy to that?
So about the size of it, it wasn't just Johnny; it was the rest of them. The Heartbreakers.
Right, the whole band. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but the only thing is I don't know, the Wild and Crazy Boys, but they were a really good band, the Heartbreakers.
Oh yeah,
oh yeah.
You heard about Walter right, this summer?
Saw them at the rehearsal.
You heard about Walter passing away, right?
Yeah, they've been gigging a lot, you know, and they could play, and they do you know what? They were so good. They was nearly as good as us.
Wow.
Yeah, but you heard Walter passed away over the summer, right?
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah, he was a nice guy.
I actually did a tour 2 years ago with Walter. We did the LAMF thing with Burke and Mike Ness, you know.
Right. I remember that at Bowery Electric.
Bowery Electric, and then we did one in Brooklyn somewhere.
Oh, you probably did, yeah.
Right. Now, in February of '77, you quit the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
You wrote a book in 1990 called "I Was a Teenage Sex Pistol." I've actually read it, and you claimed it was kind of the relationship between you and John was the real reason, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. You know, what's so crazy about it all is all the stories that came out after the fact kind of blurred all that. Did you have a lot of bad feelings at the time when you started hearing, you know, that you like Beatles or whatever? You know?
Well, that's because it was bullshit and it wasn't true, you know, so that upset me. But on the other hand, I was busy, you know. I went straight on and I formed another band of rich kids. We got quite a big record deal. Was working hard on that, and then but when that didn't, you know, when it had run its course, because Mid-Year and Rusty Egan kind of started a band, Visage, and they started a whole new romantic thing with Steve Strange. That kind of broke that up. But then I got a phone call from Iggy Pop. The next thing I'm on tour with Iggy Pop, and I made an album. I was busy.
I was just gonna get into all that.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. Like you, what do you think of the whole punk scene? Do you like the punk scene? Because you seem to be much more of a pop guy than a punk scene guy. Like,
well, I like rock and roll music. You know, I was brought up in the sort of '60s, and we had this fantastic thing pirate radio where bands like the Kinks and the Yardbirds and the Who and the Early Stones and the Small Faces, that's what got me going.
Right.
Yeah,
I didn't sound exactly like them, but I wanted to keep that spirit, you know. And then through the 60s, it become prog rock and bollocks, you know.
Yeah.
Even
those
with the
were great,
Pistols, we went
great
back to
songs.
something a bit more simpler as a reaction to you know, Jethro Tull and Barclay James Harvest and Pink Floyd and
It's big difference.
you know, songs that are quite Shakespearean, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But you know, you guys never called it the punk scene. That was just a name thrown on you by the media. Okay.
I mean, to us, and I think we'd all in the band would agree this, we wasn't really punks. We were the Sex Pistols. The punk scene was what came afterwards, but it was good for us because it kind of made it look like we was the pinnacle of this movement in England. But I like punk, but it all depends what you call punk, and it's a very broad church. You know, there's a big difference between the Sex Pistols and the Clash. They're totally different bands for a start, but there's a big difference then between the Buzzcocks and Wire. They're all supposed to be punk bands, but you know, Wire sound like early Pink Floyd.
And Glenn, it was the same thing in the New York scene. All the bands were different.
Yeah, well,
you know?
Yeah, but that's a good thing, you know. And it's like Talking Heads and the Ramones and Blondie, like kind of good double.
I totally agree. Now,
Richard Hell, you know.
One last question about the Pistols I want to ask you. Actually, it's kind of a two-part. Then we'll move on to bigger and better things. When they recorded the album, okay, Never Mind Bollocks, you had already moved on. You were out of the band. There's all different stories about your involvement on it. Did you play on it?
No, I don't play on much of it at all. I mean, my claim to fame is they're my songs, you know.
Yeah, right. You wrote a bunch of them, right?
Pardon?
You wrote a lot of the songs on the album, right?
Yeah. I mean, not all, you know, not all of them, but all the catchy bits of mine. And Pretty Vacant's my song totally, and you know. I don't really like talking about all this, but people always ask me these questions, you know.
Yeah, and I know, and I told you I wouldn't go crazy with it. But the last Pistols question I want to ask you is: do you think that Malcolm McLaren's involvement with the band was more of a helpful thing or a hurtful thing? How would you describe it?
It's both, you know.
Could you have done it without him?
You couldn't have had one. No, it wouldn't have happened without. Nobody would have heard of us if it wasn't for him. But I think equally, nobody would have heard of him if it wasn't for us.
Yeah.
So it was a symbiotic relationship, you know.
Symbiotic, right.
And everybody who was involved in that scene had a contribution to make. You know, Jamie Reed's fantastic artwork. Even this guy called Bernard Rhodes that went on to manage the Clash. He was Malcolm's mate at the beginning, you know, and he'd be coming down and putting ideas in. And we didn't always listen to them. But they were older than us and they were hip, you know, and it all kind of rubs off somehow, you know.
Yeah. All right. Now, after the Pistols, you got right back on your feet. You started another band called the Rich Kids with Steve New, Midger, and Rusty Egan. The band's been described at times as power pop.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that description? I know you kind of just talked about it a little bit, but did you feel it was? I mean, you were. Some of the songs are heavy. I don't know if I agree with that power pop.
He was like rock and roll, like more rock and roll than power pop.
Yeah, I thought we had a bit more going than just a power pop thing. I mean, it's, you know, people seem to want to put music into some kind of pigeonhole because they can't really describe it in words, and that's kind of what we got stuck with. But I know, you know, we were one of the first bands. We were really big into Bowie. Was working with Mick Ronson. You know, we really loved Low and Heroes and Lust for Life and The Idiot, Bowie, Iggy albums. I think we was the only band other than Bowie to put a harmonizer on the snare drum first time round. So I think there's more going on in that. You know, songs like Strange One and Ghost and Marching Man and Hung on You. Mm-hmm. They're my favourites from that. I think if we managed to make an album that was all like that, but we didn't kind of.
I mean, me personally, the album is one of my favorites from those couple of years there, like 78, 79, 80. It's one of my favorites.
You got taste.
Recording for John Peel, DJ John Peel. when you were in the Rich
Well,
Kids.
sorry,
What do you remember? What do you remember of John? Because he is such an important figure. What do you remember of him?
He was. I met him a few times. He was a sort of quiet, almost a bit of a shy bloke. Knew his music. Had an eye for stuff out there. I mean, it was because of John Peel that I dug the Faces. That he would play, and T-Rex, he would play them. He had a show in the late 60s, early 70s called Top Gear. And I started listening to that, and that was when I first started listening to music that wasn't just sort of daytime pop music.
Yeah. We're actually planning on doing a show on John Peel. He's come up so often in shows that we've done, like you say, T-Rex, even like the Undertones and bands like that. He was influential on getting that music out there. So we're gonna do a show on him. Another guy I want to do a show on, and you knew him, was Mick Ronson. Now, how did he get involved with producing the Ghost of Princes and Towers album for the Rich Kids?
Because there were two guys that used to manage us, Pete and Jerry, and Pete was like a tour manager. And the phone rang one day, and this voice from Hull went, "Oh, hello, is Peter there, please?" And I said, "No, he's not. Can I take a message?" And he went, he said, "Can you tell him Michael called?" And I said, "Hang on a second, that's not Mick Ronson, is it?" And he went, "Yeah." And he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Glenn." He said, "Oh, it's not Glen Matlock, is it?" And I said, "How do you know who I am?" And he said, "Well, Peter told me that he was managing you." And I said, "Well, look, we're looking for a producer. Are you interested?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Let's meet up." So he came down the next night. Then we played a couple of songs, and he liked them, and we all went to the pub and got horribly drunk together. And that was it. So you don't get what you don't ask for. So
that was smart.
That's amazing. Wow.
Rick Ronson was fantastic. He was a superlative musician. He was funny. He had a lot of style. He's a great guitarist, great arranger. I think he's kind of unheralded a bit. I mean, what would a Transformer album been without him?
Yeah, you couldn't have had Transformer without Mick Ronson. I mean, he did all the arrangement, all the. He played the piano, everything on that.
He even played the recorder on it.
Wow. Amazing. Very underrated guy. He's almost forgotten in some circles. I talk about Mick Ronson all the time. I play a lot of his music.
Good man.
Now, after the Rich Kids, you also got involved with one of my all-time favorite people. That's Iggy Pop.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
All right. Iggy basically was putting a band together for the Soldier album that he was going to record, right?
Well, no, it was before them.
You were in his band before. Okay, how'd that happen?
Well, he made the New Values album, and the guy who played bass on the album, Jackie Clark, was going to play second guitar on the live tour. So they were short of a bass player, and my agent was his agent, this guy called John Giddings, and he knew that the Rich Kids thing had just broken up, and he suggested me, and I was just sitting at home, the Rich Kids thing had folded, and I didn't know what to do, and I actually really thought to myself, what am I going to do now? Wouldn't it be great if the phone rang? And I'm not kidding you, 2 minutes later the phone rang, and I said, "Who's that?" And this guy said, "Well, look, you don't know me, my name's Peter Davis, but I manage Iggy Pop, and Jim's here, and he'd like to have a word with you." And I spoke to him, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, don't know, talking to you." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, we're in London." He said, "Would you like to meet for a drink?" And I said, "Where are you staying?" He said, "At the Athenaeum, which is a very fancy hotel." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Who's buying?" He said, "We are." And I was down there in half an hour. The next thing, I'm on tour around Europe with Iggy, But the thing with playing with Iggy is he'd been touring properly for a lot. And everything I'd done up to then, the Rich Kids and the SexPistols, we hadn't done that many big shows, It was always mates helping us out with the gear, and they didn't really know what plugged into where, and leads didn't work, and it was all a bit amateur. But Iggy had a proper crew, and we were flying to places, and there you go. The first time I went to the States, I was playing with Iggy Pop. And in fact, the first show I ever did in New York, we headlined the Palladium on Canal Street. I don't think it's there anymore.
Was that a show with the Cramps?
But the Cramps supported us. And
I heard about that.
It was Halloween. The whole audience was in Halloween outfits, which in England we never used to really celebrate them. And backstage was Debbie Harry dressed as a witch, and she gave me a kiss on the cheek. It was fantastic. First time I'm in New York. Like, me.
Well, we got something. We got something in common because Debbie Harry was on one of her solo tours in the late '80s, and I went, and I got there for the sound check. Me and a couple other people, and when she was done, she came down and she kissed me on the cheek too.
Was it the left one or the right one?
I was like, I'm not washing my face for a week. All right.
I still haven't. Look, there you go.
Oh man. But okay, so when it came time to do the Soldier album with Iggy, I pulled it out. I have it on vinyl. I was listening to it yesterday, and one thing I didn't remember is you got some great writing credits on there. Like you wrote, you got a writing credit for Ambition, Mr. Dynamite, Take Care of Me, and I Need More.
Yeah, that's right.
I totally forgot that. And were you aware that there is a store here on the Lower East Side called I Need More?
No, I didn't know that, but I do know that poor old Jimmy from Trash and Vaudeville.
That's what I was going to say.
I Need More tattooed on his back.
Yeah, that was Jimmy's store when he left Trash and Vaudeville a couple of years ago.
Oh, right, okay, right.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I mean, but with that album, there was some controversy with that. James Williamson originally brought in on it, and I think Bowie did some producing afterwards.
James Williamson started producing it, and he had an argument with Bowie and walked out the studio, so he was left with no producer. Yeah, and in fact, James never did anything in music ever again.
Up until a couple of years ago.
Until he got when Scott Ashton died and Ron Ashton died, and he got the phone call from Iggy, and then he was in the Stooges again. So that's quite a sort of a rags. But he did well in the meantime. He became. I'm still friends with James, and he went and retrained and got himself a job and ended up as vice president of Sony Electronics division in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
That's a job.
He stuck his neck out and got rewards, and then got the phone call to play with Big again. So there you go.
Now, one thing with that album,
there's some good songs on that album. There's some good songs on that album, and I think
there's some great bass playing by you. The production on it, they really, there's a lot of bass on that album. You hear a lot of it. One
of the tracks, Loco Mosquito,
yeah,
is not credited, but Bowie actually mixed that, and he pushes up my bass in the middle. There's a
bass
drum, and he puts the bass right up. So I was quite chuffed about that.
Yeah, you could definitely tell.
Wow.
But doing those, that's all. I mean, you toured the Soldier album also, right?
No, not really.
No?
What happened was we did the European Tour for New Values, and then we broke and made the album, but didn't mix it. And then we continued the New Values tour in the States, and then it was mixed in New York at the end of the tour.
Right.
But yeah, and then it kind of all went a bit tits up again. I love playing with Iggy, but I got fed up with him getting his dick out in front of me all the time. But really, it's not. And you know what?
Wow.
Nice bloke. Not that impressive.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your book. I Was a Teenage Sex Pistol, that came out in 1990. Did you write that book to kind of get the record straight on things? Was that something that you felt you had to do?
A little bit, yeah. Also, I got fed up with talking about the Sex Pistols all the time, and I thought if I wrote a book about it, I'd never have to answer another question about the Sex Pistols again. But of course, as soon as you write a book about something, people ask you all the questions.
Yeah. That's true. You brought attention.
It was quite cathartic for me because, you know, I've been busy and then I got a bit quieter and I didn't quite know what to do next. And I've always been busy doing sessions and playing with people and having little projects. And the musician's life is some things take off and some things don't. And, you know, it's a bit of a roller coaster. And I thought it'd be a good way to kind of just clear my mind out. And it kind of made me sort of come to a bit more of an accommodation with myself.
Yeah.
I wrote that book, so I'm glad I did it. And I'm quite happy it's still out now. You can still buy it online.
Yeah, it's still for sale. You can get it.
Yeah, so writing the book.
So now it's in its 5th or 6th edition, you know.
Yeah, writing the book was almost like therapy, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
You put everything you put everything on the writing.
Do you have another one in the works, maybe?
I've been thinking about it.
I mean, John's wrote 2. You can write 2.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. You see, I don't know how you can have 2 life stories.
I said the same thing. I actually his second book I actually prefer more than the first one.
Well, I haven't read any of them, so I'll have to take your word on
that. You know the stories anyway.
Yeah, maybe.
But in 1994, you were in a band called the Mavericks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I just want to mention a little shout out to a friend of ours, a guy named Ron Granger. He did a show with us about Slade. Okay. He's a Brit and he used to follow Slade around. Now, he texted me yesterday and he wanted to mention that he's cousins with Paul O'Brien from the Mavericks.
Okay.
Yeah, so he just wanted to say hello.
Cousin with who? I missed that last bit. Paul?
His name is Ron Granger, and he's cousins with Paul from the Mavericks, Paul O'Brien.
Okay, not Gary Granger.
Gary Granger?
Well, we call him Ron. I don't know if that...
Well, perhaps there's no one, because there's another guy I don't know that well, Gary Granger. He used to play with Rod Stewart, and he's related to Paul O'Brien.
He might be. He might be.
As well, so maybe he's... But the thing with Paul O'Brien, who now lives in New Zealand, is a good lad. He's got everywhere you go in the world. I get a phone call. You're playing in Ypsilanti tonight. I got a cousin there. Can you put him on the guest list? You're playing in Paris. I got a cousin. Can you put him on a... So he's probably got Uncle.
It's good to have a connection in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
Now the Mavericks. I saw some footage on YouTube of them. You guys did the Mick Ronson Memorial. That's
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Because I became, you know, after meeting Mick, I became big friends with their family. And I'm good friends with Maggie Ronson, his younger sister.
Yeah.
And she got it together and she asked me to do it. But that was a good night. It was a bittersweet, sad night.
Okay.
But, you know, other people played it. I mean, we played and Blue Weaver, great keyboard player, used to be in... Well, he'd been in Mock the Hoople and he'd also been in Love Affair, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever meet Ian Hunter?
Yeah, a few times. Well, I played with Ian Hunter.
Oh.
I did a bit with Mick Ronson. We did a lot of work on his Never Alone with a Schizophrenic album.
Oh, right.
So I played on that with him. It was supposed to be Simon Coke. He couldn't do it. And Clyde Bunker from Jethro Tull. But the thing was, Ian hadn't finished writing all the songs. We was in the studio in London. It got a bit boring. I said, "You're daft." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you've only got half your songs. We're sitting there. It's costing a fortune." And he said, "Well, I can do that." I said, "Well, okay." I didn't realise. I think they wanted me to work with the writing, but I was in a bit in awe of them. I said, "Why don't you take a break and go and write the rest of the songs?" And he went, And then he did. And he wrote some more songs. But what he did, he went back to America to have his break, and then he re-recorded the whole album with the E Street Band. So I should have kept my mouth shut.
Wow.
But it was good, you know, at the age of 23. I'm in the studio with Mick Ronson and Ian Hunter and stuff.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How did you get involved with the Damned on their Not of This Earth album?
Well, I didn't. The only thing I did, I'm friends with Rat Scabies, and he was doing some stuff. I can't even remember when it was. He was doing some stuff, and he said, "Well, I'll come and put some bass on it." So it was some studio. I didn't even know what it was for, right? I thought it was one of these projects, and I went down there. When I got down there, the bass player was there, and Rat was talking to him. And as I walked in, Rat went, "Right, Glen's in. Now fuck off." To their bass. And I was like, "Oh no, this is embarrassing." And then I did his stuff. I never even heard the finished song. It was I just put some bass on it.
I think it's one track. You get a credit on the album. I have the album. You get a credit.
Well, there was a song I remember doing, Slipstream or something. I don't know if that's the one.
Yeah. We saw the Damned together last year when they opened for the Misfits at Madison Square Garden, and I've seen the Damned about 7 or 8 times over the years. And just to see them in Madison Square Garden was incredible.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. But I actually bumped into Dave Vanian last week.
Great singer.
Yeah, and it was funny. I bumped into him in Baker Street,
Uh-huh.
and I said, and he had a big coat on with this lady friend of his, and they looked all a bit old-fashioned with their 1930s style coat. And I said, "Where you been? You've been to the who's the detective? Who's the famous English fictional detective from Baker
Sherlock
Street?
Holmes?
Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, I said, "You've been to the Sherlock Holmes Museum?" And he said, "Yeah, but it was shut." He said, "I want to get a box of." But anyway, I was chatting to him, but they're going out with the original Damned with Brian James and
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah.
So
Damned,
to me,
the Damned are one of the best. Now, in '96, you came out with a solo album called "Who's He Think He Is When He's at Home."
That's right. Yeah.
Right. But also in '96, the Sex Pistols got back together.
Well, do you know what? I made that album in late 1995.
Right.
And I signed to Creation. And at that stage, there was no talk about the Sex Pistols reforming. And it came together really quickly. Because I went to LA to see some people, and I ended up sort of mending some fences with Steve and John. The next thing, we got a world tour, which I wasn't going to say no to, but I also had this album out.
Yeah.
That was about to come out, and it kind of looked like I was cashing in. But when I made the record, I didn't even know there was going to be a Sex Pistols tour, you know. So, and I think there's some good songs on that album.
It is. I did check some of it out. I do remember when it came out. I remember reading about it in like Max Rock and Roll or something like that. But then right away the Sex Pistols thing happened, so I thought it kind of got a little overshadowed.
Yeah, you got well overshadowed, yeah.
Yeah. But
it don't mean it's not a bad record. There's some good songs on it.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was amazed when the Pistols got back together. I never thought I would see them. I did see you guys at Roselands in New York City.
That's a great
for that gig. That was like in 96 or so.
Talking to Debbie Harry, when we was playing away, there was supposed to be nobody on the stage, right? Apart from the down guy. And the other side of the stage was just a PA stack at Roseland. And when I'm playing, I thought, there's somebody in the darkness behind the PA column. I thought, no, there shouldn't be anybody there. And we finished one number. I looked at somebody there, did one more number. Look around. There's 2 people there. Dennis Hopper and Uma Thurman.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, it turned out those mates with Steve, but like Debbie Harry, I got introduced to Uma Thurman, gave me a kiss on the other cheek, and I still haven't watched that one.
You beat me on that one. I never got kissed by her. But
at least I didn't get kissed by Dennis Hopper.
Wow. One thing I was really curious about all these years with that reunion tour, why no new songs?
Because John didn't want to do it.
Oh. He just wanted to do what was out there, and that was it.
Well, I think he was kind of not scared, but I think he thinks the whole Pistols thing is there, and then if you do something that doesn't match up to it, it's got a danger of denigrating that. I can see that, but I don't see that's a reason to not try to do that.
I agree with you.
It's a challenge, and if you wrote something and it didn't really come up to scratch, there was a couple of ideas knocking around. I wrote something, Paul wrote something, and we knocked them through with Chris Thomas, who thought they were good, but John wouldn't write any words, so it just kind of petered out, really, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the timing of it I thought was great. I mean, 96, 97 was the height of, you know, Green Day and bands like that didn't measure up to you guys whatsoever. You could really kick some ass by making a new album showing how it was supposed to be done.
Yeah,
you know, I always thought you could have.
Well, thanks for thinking that. It's just the way it went, you know.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Okay.
You know, I'm not that bothered about it. It's just could have done it, didn't want to do it, so there you go. You know.
Yeah. Now, during the time of the Sex Pistols, you did a couple of reunions in '96 and 2008, but you also had a band called the Philistines. 3 albums.
Philistines.
Philistines? Am I saying it wrong?
Well, you're saying.
I'm American. I don't know how to speak English.
Well, you're saying it the American way, but we're English, so it's the Philistines. But I got a friend.
All right.
I got a friend, a Jewish friend in New York, and she told me, we had the same conversation. She said, when Jewish people in New York have got Stein in their name, it's when they're kind of working class, they're a Stein.
Yeah.
But when they start to think they're Steen, and when they start to think they're climbing the social ladder, they become a Stein.
Right. That's the upper class version.
Yeah. So
that's it.
We was upper class Philistines, right?
Yeah. Now, there were 3 albums with the Philistines. You had Open Mind, On Something, Born Running, but you also had Best of 2 after that. What do you remember about those times playing with that band? That was more of a rock band, right?
Well, it was more of a rock band. I mean, basically, they were me, you know.
Yeah.
And with my mates, whoever was around at the time, and that was kind of it, you know. I'm a songwriter, and you write songs, and when you got more than 12 songs in your head, if you don't record them and get them out, you can't write another 12.
Yeah.
So soon you got enough songs for an album. That's the kind of way it works, really. But
yeah.
I think all those. I'm proud of pretty much all the songs and all the albums I put out. But I've never really felt I've got the business side of it together to kind of work them properly, you know. But now I have, you know, the last album I did, and now I got another album in the can, which isn't out yet.
Really?
And it would have been out now if it wasn't for the whole lockdown COVID thing. So it's put it back a bit. But great. The last album I had Slim Jim and Earl Slick playing on it. This new one I got Earl Slick and some other guys, Chris Musto and Hot Eye.
Yeah.
Norman Watright plays bass on some of it, which I'm really pleased that he did that. You know, the guy from the Blockheads. So, you know,
now you played.
My writing has been quite consistent.
Right. You played in a band called Slinky Vagabond that I saw you guys at the Joey Ramone birthday bash at Irving Plaza back in 2007. How'd you get involved with doing that show?
Because there was a guy from St. Martin's School of Art who's a fashion designer who lives in New York. He's a friend of mine, Keenan Duffy, who sings a bit. And in fact, he did some clothes for one of the Sex Pistols tours, is how I met him. And he did some music. And he called me up. And he said, I put some stuff up on, I think it was even MySpace, you know, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he said, this guy's called me up, says he likes my stuff. You know, do you want to do something? He said, I don't know what to do. And I said, who's the guy? And he said, it's Earl Slick. What should I do? I said, well, fucking do it, you nitwit. It's, you know, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And then he said to me, he called me back and he said, well, I'm going to go in the studio and do something with Earl. He said, if we send you the tapes, will you put some bass on it? I said, yeah, sure. And then he called me up again. And he said, well, I bumped into Clem Burke, who he knew, and he said he'll play drums on it. I said, well, if you got Clem on it and Earl, just book a studio and I'll come over. Because I'm, you know, I like
Clem's a fantastic drummer.
So we went up to this studio called Clubhouse in Rhinebeck, and that's where I met Al for the first time. And we got on quite well. And in fact, he said, what key is this song in? And somebody said, and he got a capo out, you know, to change the key. And I said to him, that's cheating. And he went, wise guy. You know, we immediately had this kind of Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon thing going on. It's funny, you know. I like it. He's a great guitarist, you know. Don't tell him that, but he's great. You know.
I like him in. I mean, he's known for the work he did with Bowie and stuff, but I liked him in Phantom Rocker and Slick.
Yeah, I don't know so much about that band, but well, that was the
And
other thing.
I know you've been playing with Slim Jim.
Yeah,
And,
but at that stage, when I made my last album, which is good to go, which is out on Amazon and YouTube and all the usual outlets, I went to see Dylan play at the Albert Hall in London, and I've always done loads of acoustic shows, just me and an acoustic guitar. Right?
Yeah,
I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
And I went to see Dylan, and you know what? He was really boring. He's written some fantastic songs. You couldn't work out which one was which.
Yeah.
He looked like he didn't want to be there, although he does 100 gigs a year. He looked really uncomfortable. So I concentrated on the band. And the band he had Tony Garnier playing double bass. He had Charlie Sexton on guitar. And the drummer, I can't remember who the drummer was, but he played half the songs with brushes. And I thought, oh, perhaps I could do something like that with my songs.
Yeah.
Who do I know? And I thought, oh, I know Slim Jim. You know, he's only got half a drum kit. I'll ask him. I said, well, I'm thinking of making a record. Would you play drums on it? And he said, yeah. And I said, you got any ideas for a guitarist? And he said, well, how about Slick? I didn't know that Slim Jim knew Earl. I'd already met Earl. And it
they were in the band.
Place, you know. So we went upstate to Rhinebeck again and did the thing, you know.
I always feel that maybe you want to go back and get a copy of the album from Slim Jim, but I think that's one of the most underrated albums of the 80s.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, they had that one sort of hit called "Men Without Shame." That was like a top 40 kind of thing. But
well, I know they had a big hit in Australia.
Yes, and Keith Richards plays on that album.
Yeah.
It's
very cool. Told me a few times.
They did a second album which I didn't like as much, but the first one is really good.
Right.
You know. Now, let's talk about your latest. I know you said you got one in the can. It hasn't come out yet, but you got one called "Good to Go" that came out in 2018.
Yeah, and that's the one with Slim Jim and
right.
Earl on it. And when Earl isn't playing,
great album cover, man. You combing your hair, great. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I like that album a lot.
It's
a different kind of album for you.
Well, yeah, deliberately so. You know, it was again sort of getting that bit of Americana in. I want to record it in the States. You know, I get fed up with kind of punk rock that goes, you know, it's all sort of chug eights all the time. And when you play with Slim Jim, he wants to swing everything, you know, like a rockabilly kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of fits him in a way. I don't even play bass on that album. I play acoustic guitar, you know.
Right.
Because I really like in the Spiders from Mars the way Bowie plays rhythm acoustic. You know,
yes.
It gives more space to the sound. I was kind of trying to go for that a little bit. You know, I don't want to copy things, but it's just a good sort of starting point. So that's what it came together. We recorded 12 songs in, you know, a week. And then I went home to London and finished off the vocals and mixed it. And the guy who mixed it is Murray McNulty, who did Bowie's last album. You know, Earl introduced me to him, and he worked with him on the Last Day album.
Black Star.
But, yeah. No, I think it was The Last Day. You know, the one where it looks like Heroes and it's got a...
Oh, yes, the one before that, yeah.
I met the guy who did that artwork, you know, with a Post-it note. And I said, I thought your artwork was fantastic. And he said, you know what? You're the first one who said that to me. And I really appreciate it coming from you. He was a cool guy.
Okay. All right.
It's a great idea, you know?
That's great. That's great. Okay, Glenn, I'm going to wind down here, but I'm going to ask you about 3 bands. And I want you to tell me how much they were influenced or what you think of them. Okay?
All right.
First band, the Ramones. What can you say about the Ramones?
Well, what can I say about the Ramones? I like the Ramones. I think they were kind of like dirty bubblegum rock and roll. You know, they're sort of, to me, they're somehow the Archies meets the Kingsmen. You know.
Yes, that's very good.
That's cool. And when they first came to England, we knew of the Ramones, but they hadn't made a record.
Right.
So we didn't know what they sounded like. We all went to see them at Dingwalls. and we were kind of quite surprised how similar they were to us, kind of.
They were.
Nobody else was doing that kind of thing. So we both, you know, when I come to New York, sometimes I get asked to do some kind of punk seminar or something like that, and people always say, who came first, the Sex Pistols or the Ramones? And of course, being the Englishman in New York, I always say the Sex Pistols to wind people up for a laugh. But really, you know, we both grew up at the same time, opposite sides of the Atlantic, and I think it's because everybody got fed up with all the kind of, you know, the pompous kind of bands, like I said, like Barclay James Harvest and Yes and all that at the same time. You know, they wanted something new. So there you go. I like the Ramones. I did a tour with them. I had a band called the Spectres, which we haven't mentioned, but I supported them in England. I did a whole tour. So.
Yeah. Did you see the argument that John had with Marky?
Yeah.
Crazy, right? Did you agree with him?
I kind of prefer what Mark had to say, right?
Okay. All right. The next band I got to ask you about is Motorhead.
Is who?
Motorhead. What's your opinion on Motorhead, Lemmy?
I thought they were good. I thought they were very much like the Ramones with long hair. I thought. Cut from the same cloth somehow. I wasn't a big fan. I'm not a big fan of all that kind of sort of comic strip artwork and, you know, the devil and 666 and I just think it's bollocks, basically. You know, so
they would be lumped in with that heavy metal stuff sometimes, but I always thought they were just a heavy rock band.
Heavy rock band, but that side of it, yeah, there's more of a rock and roll band, kind of. But all those kind of graphic things and all that, it just makes me think it's like music for tractor mechanics.
Yeah, what do you think of his bass playing? Because a lot of people love his bass playing.
Yeah, he's kind of direct and to the point.
Yeah. He had a long history going back to the 60s, the Rockin' Vickers and all that.
The Rockin' Vickers. I mean, I knew Lemmy pretty well. He used to drink with the punks.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Just about when he was going to split Hawkwind, you know.
Yeah,
Jack Daniels all the time.
He drank a lot of Jack Daniels, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
I never saw him fall over though. There you go.
No, you know what? A lot of people have said that. They've gone on the record saying they've drank with Lemmy a million times. Whatever drugs he was doing, drinking with him, never saw him wasted. Never.
Wow.
Amazing.
Kept it together.
Now, the last band I got to ask you about is a band that came a lot of years later after you. But I just want to know what you think of that second generation of punk. What do you think of Green Day?
I like some of their songs.
Yeah.
My young son, when he was about 12, 13, was a big fan. I had to go and see him with him. I think their music's good. Their show just goes on too much, you know, getting people out of the audience and, you know, what would be great for an hour, sort of 2.5 hours later, you're thinking, oh, I wish I brought the newspaper with me. but I tell you what I do remember. I remember buying my son, when he was 13 or something, for his iPod back then, you know, one of those docks that you put in and there's built-in speakers, right? And he had a wooden chest of drawers in his bedroom, you know, to keep your socks and football shirts in and stuff. So we put it on the top of that, and I said, right, what are you going to put on? And he went, American Idiot. So we put it on press play. It sounded fantastic. It was like, wow, you know, it was really well done.
American Idiot was actually a pretty good album.
Yeah.
For that time, it was a good album.
Just particularly that track, you know. And I had a funny story with Green Day. You know, they're good guys. And I some award thing, I had to give them an award in London. This is maybe about 10 years ago. And when you do these award ceremonies, you have to go backstage and you have a picture taken with the band and whoever's presented it. And as we're walking backstage, for all I knew, there's Slipknot coming the other way, right? And Green Day started really having a go at them. You know, hey, you know, did your mum send you? Really having a go. And Slipknot didn't say anything. And I thought, well, this is really weird. I'm involved in this sort of kind of American rock and roll Peyton Place scenario. And they just took it, you know, and you thought they'd give them 2 times back. Anyway, we had to go and have a picture date. And I said, what's going on there? They didn't say anything about back. He said, Glenn. Yeah, Billy Joe said, Glenn. He said, that wasn't Slipknot. Because they're all wearing masks. They sent their fans dressed up as Slipknot to accept the award for them. And next thing, these poor kids have got like Green Day and the Sex Pistols taking the mickey out of them.
Wow. That's amazing, man. So, Glenn, I want to thank you for coming on. You've been fantastic. You were caught in a traffic jam and you did the interview in a car. I can't thank you more than that.
Well, let's say thanks to technology, eh?
Yeah, I know.
Technology.
It's true. Thank you, technology. Listen, anytime you're in New York City, you look us up. This man here is one hell of a bartender. Okay, we've got a bar on the Lower East Side called the International Bar on First Avenue. You come down, we'll hook you up. You're part of us now. All right, I really appreciate it.
Sounds good. All right, well, thanks for having us. But play a couple of tracks, you know.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be playing it, and hopefully all this ends soon, and you can get some new music out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I was just before this. I was supposed to come to the States. I was going to be opening up for Dropkick Murphys.
Oh,
in Boston.
good band.
I was going to be in Boston on St. Patrick's Day. I was going to do
that's
that.
Every year they do.
And then I had a couple of shows in Canada, and I was going to come back to New York, and I had some just solo shows, you know, club shows and stuff, and I was picking up loads of shows, and I was going to sit with Mario and go through all the Too Much Guitar that El's put on the new album, you know, and mix it. And
right.
I couldn't do that because of the lockdown, so I've still got to do that. So as soon as I can come over, I'll do that for the new album. Sounds cool.
Hopefully that's very soon. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
thank you very much, Glenn. All right, and best of luck to you.
And then maybe
thanks for coming on. All right.
Thanks for having us, and maybe you might even have a new president by then. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So
who knows?
I hope it works out the best for you Americans.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you, man.
My name
Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Bye.